GearNetwork.com.
Hey everyone, John Cimino here for the Gear Radio Network, and you have asked and asked repeatedly, what is up with the app? We know you have one, and you never push it, you never do anything with it. Well, guess what? We got a better one, and it is free, it is absolutely available for you, and there's so much more you can do with it. Visit GearNetwork.com and click Get the App. It's up on the top banner, or if you're feeling really brave, head to GearNetwork.mobapp.at on your mobile phone and your mobile phone's browser, and you can take Gear Network with you wherever you go. Listen to every show on the Gear Network right from the app. You can view all of our social networks in real time. You can read Gear Network and BLTDsports.com blogs in real time. And you can also shop Amazon and help us out and help you out. It is free. Did I mention that? Again, GearNetwork.com or GearNetwork.mobapp.at. Download it right now. This is a Gear Network production.
Okay, welcome back to the show, everyone.
Okay, welcome back to the show, everyone.
Okay, welcome back to the show, everyone.
Welcome back.
I'm not going to do it.
You're listening to Misguided Musings on the Gear Network.
And Tom sends me $6.66, but Tom's $6.66 came with a fun little note that said, for anal sexes.
You know, they can finally get to work on the biopic, which has to be titled From Dildos to Bullet Holes. Died in Oregon Trail 2.
Jesus Christ.
They tried to cross the river. That was their mistake.
So you know what makes me say, fuck it? Apple picking. Every fucking year, people pile into their cars with their kids, their snotty, bratty kids.
You're listening to a new episode of Misguided Musings here on the Gear Network. Here's your host, Jordan Oster.
Welcome to episode number 11 of Misguided Musings. I am your host, Jordan. Tonight I am joined by Tom and Matt. Jesse is off. He got his penis stuck in a window while he was peeping on his neighbor. Kind of gruesome.
He's a peeping Jesse.
He was a peeping Jesse. It was not very good from what I understand. He tried to send me a picture, but I couldn't see it. So I just said, you know what, you drink it off tonight and we'll try it again next week. So we are sans the comic tonight. And that leaves us another person down. But we do have Tom back. So welcome back, Tom.
Yeah, I'm here.
How's your microwave hot dog dick doing?
I have no clue what you're talking about, but microwave hot dogs are delicious.
Okay, it seems to be. You seem to be a lone wolf on that.
Yeah, no, I think the microwave hot dogs are actually kind of like awkward, and they kind of
gas station hot dogs.
No. Microwaving is the way to do it. It really.
Do you enjoy gas station hot dogs, Tom?
Huh?
Do you enjoy gas station hot dogs? The ones that have been rolling there, they're all like wrinkly and old.
He also loves the Cheetos.
Because I've always looked at those and I've said, man, like they're constantly rolling. It's like the perfect way to cook a hot dog. You know what I mean? Like no one side is being cooked for too long because it's continuously rolling.
I think grilling a hot dog is the best way to cook a hot dog.
I think so too.
I wish that there was a way I could just continuously roll my hot dog for, days and weeks.
Well, I guess now you can, and you can do it without fear that. Oh wait, no, you didn't get a vasectomy. You overdosed on Viagra.
I still don't know what you're talking about.
I wouldn't continuously roll your hot dog for days. All right. Well, you can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Misguided Musings. I am at J_K_Oster, and we are at Musing Podcast. Matt is at An Eclectic Taste, or you can just search for Bill Castle. And as always, Jesse is at AfricanJ, HAfricanJ. This episode, we are going to be covering some current events, including the legalization of marijuana in Massachusetts as it is getting closer to being put on the ballot for this election cycle, the death of Antonin Scalia, and Matt wanted to talk about useless award shows and the boycotting of them for lack of diversity. So that's going to be fun. And then the second half of the show, we will just discuss renewable energy sources and privatizing the use on like homes and private residences. Matt, do you want to start off with your useless award show rant? Because I know what's coming.
No, I mean, obviously, yes. I just, I think award shows, especially for either if it's music or art or, use are completely not needed. I think when it comes to art's very subjective, and it's really hard to determine what's the best. I understand that there is several movies in which a consensus is that, this is the best movie of the year, or consensus say this is the best album of the year. I think that the Grammys represents the worst, because it's either going to be, what album sold the most copies, which doesn't necessarily mean the best album of the year. And then also on top of that, if it's not the best album of the year, they normally give it to an artist that's work has been, their best work or material was several years ago. It seems to be, a retread album, which basically they're just they're honoring them with, their career in music as opposed to bringing out a great piece of music. I mean, I understand. It's a night in which people can watch in to look at useless things like dresses and listen to really horrible tributes. I just have a real problem with the Grammys. I always have. I've never liked it. I've always said that, I'd rather stick 2 iron needle pins into my ears, into my eyes and ears at the same time than actually watch a ceremony. The fact that Taylor Swift, an artist that I've mentioned several times in this show, is somebody I really can't stand. I feel like if you guys have ever seen the show Parks and Rec, you might remember one of the characters in it. It was Jean-Ralphio's sister, Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
And she was like, money, please. I feel like Taylor Swift is just like, Grammy, please. And, finally the judges or the constituents, people that vote on this award were like, okay, yeah, let's give it to her. She's just going to complain and write a fucking album about us, just like her 15 or 16 ex-boyfriends. So, yeah, and I saw briefly that performance by Lady Gaga, and being such a huge David Bowie fan, I thought it was a clusterfuck. I thought it was dishonorable. And I didn't like Lady Gaga before, but now I fucking despise her. And I might have found a new enemy for 2016. So I guess you can see the Grammys were a success because, my hate fuck hard on has got even larger. So I guess that's good for the show and rents in general.
Yeah, but Matt, the Grammys, they still won. You know why?
Why?
Because you watched it. You actually know something about the Grammys.
I didn't watch it. I read about it the next day.
I didn't watch anything about the Grammys. I have no clue what you're talking about at all.
Yeah, I honestly, I didn't watch the Grammys, but I saw the meme of Lady Gaga and how she it was like compared to a Thundercats character or something. I thought it was kind of funny, but I'd never watched the Grammys. I couldn't care less. The red carpet irritates me because it's a bunch of people looking at a bunch of other people who make a lot of money in special clothes. That has no interest. It's a thing. Like, people have parties to watch the red carpet, and then they have parties to watch the Grammys or the Oscars. And I mean, the Oscars, great. I can't remember the last time I actually watched an Academy Awards. I had to go back and look at the last 10 years of films to see what actually won Best Picture over the last 10 years, because I had no idea. Like, Slumdog Millionaire was one of them. The King's Speech, I never even knew. I couldn't remember. I can't remember actually even going to the movies last year other than to see Star Wars. So
yeah, but it's because you had a child. Yeah,
but that doesn't matter. I mean, even before then, I don't remember the last movie I saw in theaters before Star Wars. It's just, to me, it's not, I mean, and there are movies that are totally way more worth it, looking at through these lists, that should have won and didn't. And that kind of bothers me. But
Forrest Gump beating Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction, that's fucking horrible. I mean, Forrest Gump was a good movie, but was it a fucking award-winning caliber film?
No, I think the Shawshank Redemption, the Shawshank Redemption should have won that. It's funny because I actually looked in all of the movies that I've seen on these lists, and I did go back to early 1990 just to kind of see. Silence of the Lambs actually won, which I was psyched about because it was up against Bugsy, JFK, The Prince of Tides, and Beauty and the Beast. So like it was the best out of a crap offering. And then, you know, I looked in like 93, Schindler's List won, and I thought that was a great film. It was up against the Fugitives.
Probably the best movie about
it was
the Holocaust.
up against The Piano.
The Pianist.
No, just The Piano.
Penis.
The Pianist. So, and actually, it's funny because I look back at 1992 and Unforgiven won.
Oh, that's a great movie.
I thought A Few Good Men was a better movie, but
Wait,
I don't
is that
know.
the one where they mind read?
no, A Few Good Men is the one where Tom Cruise is a Navy lawyer and he's defending the guys who essentially caused a guy to die in Guantanamo Bay.
Maybe I'm thinking of like Minister of Goat. What, isn't there one where like a bunch of people are just like mind readers? Or I can't. Man, movies are hard.
Well, you know what the problem is like I've seen a lot of the movies from like the early 90s on, like obviously Shawshank, Braveheart won in 95. But then I looked at 96 and Jerry Maguire lost to The English Patient. And to me, I think The English Patient's wildly overrated.
It's such a bore fest.
It really is. And then, Titanic won, Shakespeare in Love. Shakespeare in Love in 98 beat out Saving Private Ryan. And that to me is also a travesty because Shakespeare in Love was not worth it.
I'll say this about Saving Private Ryan. I thought it was a good movie, but I think what hurt it from being great was, the beginning of that movie, the first 20 minutes are probably the best scenes I've ever seen in a war movie. And then the ending was good. Middle, I found very tedious. I recently watched it and I was like, it's a good movie. And, it has probably some of the most innovative filmmaking I've ever seen. But at the same time, because it had that such tedious middle part, I don't know. I don't think it deserves to be a higher quality film.
It was an epic movie, and when you like kind of look back at war movies, throughout time, everybody always talks about Saving Private Ryan as being one of the best war movies like of our generation.
Yeah, but and also too, I thought there was a really strange scene. Obviously, in the beginning, you later find out that it's Matt Damon's character, and he's walking to the graveyard in France, and then there seems to be like a flashback, and then you see Tom Hanks. So the whole movie, you're thinking to yourself, "Well, Tom Hanks ain't gonna die."
Yeah, it was.
And then, of course,
I was totally blown away when that.
And I hope movie. I'm not ruining this for people.
Listen,
but also at the same time,
if they haven't seen it since 1998, I don't really care.
Go fuck yourself.
Don't ruin it. Spoiler alert.
Either way, in this year, I think the whole controversy about that stupid bitch Jada Pinkett Smith. You know what? I didn't see a lot of movies last year, so I can't tell you if there were any like great performances like for black actors, but
there was, and it was not Will Smith. I mean, from what I hear, people tell me Will Smith wasn't very good in that film. He's just
Concussion.
He's just doing it because he's playing a controversial character, a character that got a lot of press because he was basically trying to bring out to the public about the concussions that the NFL were covering up. And obviously that's subject because of the popularity of the NFL. And, in the last few years, we're just learning about all these brain injuries. But from what I hear, Will Smith didn't deserve. In fact, from what I hear too, he did a pretty piss poor job of a South African accent.
Yeah, I had heard.
So
that,
right actually. There and then,
but but still, nominated. I don't know if there were any other great.
Beast of Burden. There was Idris Elba, who's probably one of my favorite actors in Hollywood. I think he's just like an incredible actor. He was in Wire, one of my favorite TV shows. He played Stryker Bell.
Well, let's focus on the movies though. So what movie was he in this year?
He was in It was actually a Netflix movie, and that's why a lot of people believe he didn't get nominated. And he played a warlord, and the movie is called Beasts of Burden. The movie was released, I think, sometime in October, and it was only released on Netflix. It wasn't released to theater. And I thought his performance was absolutely fucking brilliant. I thought it was probably one of the best warlord kind of performances, kind of like a war criminal since what was that, Last King of Scotland, Forrest Whitaker's role.
Yeah.
And I think he deserved to win it. But you know what? I mean, it's not so much. The big problem, too, is, as they said, there obviously is a problem with race in the Oscars. But the reason for it, and even people that work in the, who are the voters and people who work in Hollywood say it's not so much that they're just, dicking around with them. They're just kind of letting their prejudice get amongst them. They're kind of letting the business part of it get ahead because as they've seen, and this is studies and this is actual fact, that the Asian market doesn't tend to movies with black actors starring in it. And it's a well-known fact that movies with black casts don't do very well over in Asia. And they say it's not even a racist part of people from Asia. They don't know how to relate because, we live in the United States of America. There's, I think, about 25% of our population is black, 50% is minority. We know, and we know obviously the struggles they've had in the past, but for a lot of people living over in Asia, they don't. Yeah. And they don't know how to relate. So when they see a black actor in the movie, they're just kind of like, well, I don't really want to watch this. And okay, you could admit, well, that's a form of prejudice, but that is one of the biggest reasons why Hollywood producers are not putting a lot of black people in roles, and that's one of the reasons why they're not getting nominated. No, I agree. I think that, Jada Pinkett Smith went outrageous about it. I do think that there is a lot of, actors who and people who work in the industry that, overblew this. But I think the big problem is the fact that, the people who do vote for the Oscars are these kind of older individuals, and it's a small amount of people that are voting. I think one of the issues it is with the voting.
Yeah, it's funny because this brings up a whole nother thing. I was actually listening to a story today, and there's this guy. His name's Anton Maldonado, I believe is his name, and he's brought a proposal before the board or before the shareholders of Apple, where he wants to create more diversity on the board of Apple or the board of directors for Apple. Currently, there's 4 diverse, members on the board, and he calls them token members because he doesn't feel like, he feels like they're on there to appease people like Jesse Jackson, Al Sharp, and so what he wants to do is he actually wants to kind of almost force the board of directors to start hiring more minority board members. And the thing that I understand is that, okay, great, Apple has their current board out of 100, and I think they said it was 150 total board members. 4 or 5 of them are minority descent, which is a staggering number. But if you go into an Apple store, I mean, there's a ton of diversity in the lower levels. It's when you get to upper management that you don't have that diversity anymore. And so this guy wants to change that, which is fine. I get that. But what does he want them to do? He wants them to start just firing people who have, no business losing a job and just replace them with somebody of minority descent. I mean, and I understand there's affirmative action, and it's got its place, I guess. But, do you want the best candidate, or do you want them to find the best African-American candidate, Chinese candidate, whatever? And I heard that today and was like, okay, well, I mean, the shareholders can vote on this proposal and the board can look at it and say, okay, well, we'll take it under consideration, and they don't have to do anything with it. But it's the first time a vote like this has come before a major publicly traded company. And so it's very interesting to watch, and I'm actually going to kind of keep an eye out on it because I want to see how the shareholders or of Apple respond to that
by making money.
Yeah, seriously. So let's move on quickly to the legalization of pot in Massachusetts. Recently, there was an article in the paper, I think it was the Herald of the Globe, that basically had said that if the legislature in Massachusetts doesn't act soon to go around the legislature, the man who introduced the proposal and got all the signatures on the petition can go and get 10,000 more signatures. And I think he has by May to do it. And if he does that, then it will automatically be put on the ballot in November of this year. When we all go to vote for president, we'll also be able to vote to legalize pot in Massachusetts.
It will happen.
It might. And to kind of piggyback off of this, there's an interesting court case that's supposed to be going up to the Supreme Court. Now, this hasn't been heard by anybody else as of yet. And so the Supreme Court can say, no, we want it to go to federal appeals court or something. And it's a decision. It's basically this, the bordering states of Colorado. I think one of them was Utah and the other one was Arizona, maybe, or New Mexico. And they actually want to make it illegal for a state to actually legalize marijuana and make it a federal mandate that no state can have legalized marijuana. So now this is becoming a states' rights issue, and it's these neighboring states going after Colorado. And I'm not sure what they're looking to get out of it, other than maybe to hurt. I can't fathom why they're actually looking to hurt the legal business. It's actually doing great things for Colorado, and it's shown that it's been doing great things for Colorado. They raised a ton of money in taxes. They've got substance abuse programs built out of the revenue that they've created on the tax on marijuana. And this could have huge impact going forward across the country. And the Supreme Court can hear the case. But if it's a close decision, like a split decision, it actually has to be tabled until they fill the seat left by Antonin Scalia. So there's a reason that I kind of brought these up together. Antonin Scalia died since our last episode, and Barack Obama will probably nominate someone to fill the seat. But because the Senate and the House of Representatives are Republican run, they can actually block a candidate from being put in the seat until a new president is sworn into office in January. And if that were the case, all of the current decisions in front of the Supreme Court that are being argued currently would actually be tabled if it was a split 4-4 decision. So if it's 5-3, they don't have to worry about it. It's not anything, it's a decision. As soon as it becomes 4-4, they actually have to dismiss the case, and it has to be brought back to them once another Supreme Court justice is nominated and approved. So it brings up some interesting issues, because there's a lot of cases that have to do with, gun control and the legalization of marijuana. And there was even some cases about, I want to say it was Planned Parenthood, that, you would look at the court now and say, well, these are probably all going to be split right down the middle, and it would be left up to the new judge. So it makes the election this year even that much more important, because if a Republican gets in, with the exception of Donald Trump, you could assume that they're probably going to go with a more conservative appointee. And if, Obama or a Democrat get in, or Obama's person gets appointed, he'll probably appoint somebody more liberal. And a lot of people are saying that maybe he should just appoint somebody who's moderate, right down the middle, and force the Republicans to kind of have to really look hard at that and say, hey, this is somebody that we could live with on most decisions, and there's no reason for us not to put him in here. What do we do? To me, anyway, I'm fairly certain that the implications of not filling the seat are worse than having the seat filled by, whomever is appointed or nominated by Obama. And I'd be interested to see what would happen in the kind of the outcry, and if this would hurt the Republicans going forward, if they just kind of stonewalled any nominee that gets put in front of them before January of next year. Well, and it's interesting to think, because now you've got something that would potentially affect Massachusetts pending court case. And so it does make it all the more, it makes it all the more something to watch and something for us to really pay close attention to.
I think the stakes in this election are already high. I mean, you get two extremes running, Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, they're both in a large amount of support, and then all of a sudden you throw a Supreme Court justice in there, and man, you just
absolutely, yeah. No, this is something this has huge. Everything that happens in 2016 has huge implications, and I'm very interested to see where this could go. Based on Trump's a wild card. You don't know what the guy will do. And it's scary how much he won South Carolina by, considering that the evangelicals, they polled evangelical voters, and a lot of them didn't vote for Cruz like they had expected. Cruz came in third, and that was a state that he was expecting to do very well in. So granted, he only came in third by about 1,000 votes, but still.
What is the coming in third? What area is that? Is that the armpits?
Coming in third, it's a huge blow to any support he would have going forward, because, Rubio, especially with Jeb Bush dropping out.
I was actually getting off subject and talking about an orifice of any kind. Obviously, coming in first is the vagina. Number two, obviously the shitter. But number three...
I want to go back and correct myself real quick. So the neighboring states that are upset with the plaintiffs in the Colorado legalization case are actually Nebraska and Oklahoma. So I do want to correct myself there. And basically, it's a very weak case, but the issue, I guess, is that what they're looking for is that they want the federal government to come in and say, no, you can't do this. And with Antonin Scalia out of there, it actually makes the case closer. And it was actually heard. The opening arguments were heard on the 19th. So this is happening as we speak, this case, and probably happening right now. And it's really interesting to kind of see, what implications this could have, because this could go back, and if it's ruled that legalizing marijuana is unconstitutional, then you've got states like Oregon and Washington or whatever that are going to have to relook at their legalization policies. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. Well, I think this is a good spot to break it off. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some alternative energy stuff in use in the private sector. So we'll take a quick break and catch you on the other side.
This year, Misguided Musings will be boycotting the 88th Annual Academy Awards. We feel that the lack of diversity can no longer go unnoticed. If you notice the carpets not matching anyone's drapes, that's because no gingers were nominated. Gingers have a lot to offer in this soulless world, and we as a people need to rally around them now more than ever. This was brought to you by the World Ginger Awareness League and Ginger's Lives Matter Foundation. Don't forget to wear your SPF 500.
Welcome back, everybody. Really, now you guys aren't going to do it. We are live in episode 11 of Misguided Musings, and we recently just talked about legalization of pot in Massachusetts and the effect that the Colorado court case currently at the Supreme Court could have on it. We've talked about the useless award shows and the boycotting of them. And so now I want to get into go ahead.
I also think we agreed on almost everything too, which is good.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I think we all kind of feel the same way about stuff here. And, I think, if we can go back real quick and touch on some of the Supreme Court stuff, but, looking at the next 4 years and another reason.
And might I add, Jordan, you might not think I was a big fan of Scalia. I do think that one of his votes was probably one of the most important votes in the history of the United States of America. It's when Larry Flint, who obviously people know as the editor of Hustler, had the Supreme Court hearing having to do with a joke he mentioned about Jerry Falwell loses virginity to his mom in the outhouse, which I thought was a great joke because, as we all know, we fucking love Jerry Falwell. But the fact that Scalia was a very religious person. At the same time, he was also a strict and staunch believer in the Constitution, and he thought the First Amendment was very important. And that was a vote that could have went either way, and his vote actually, protected Larry Flint, and to this day, it's protected a lot of people.
Scalia is he's
Scalia. I apologize.
No, that's fine. Scalia was the rare member of the Supreme Court who thought that the Constitution was not a living, breathing document and didn't evolve, but should be interpreted as written. So for him, it was very defined. The First Amendment protects the right to free speech, whether you like it or not. And, it also protects your religion. The Fourth Amendment protects you from illegal search and seizure. And there was no budging on that. He's written quite a bit of opinions on cases that the Supreme Court has seen. And they've gone, his opinions are always taken with huge weight, and they're read in many different constitutional law courses in colleges because of the weight that he carried with the decisions and the way he felt about the Constitution. He's a very influential member of the Supreme Court. And I think, his death, leaving open not only one spot, but there's going to be a kind of a domino effect, not of death, obviously, but you've got members of the Supreme Court. 3 of them were born before 1940. So they're getting to a point where they're going to all be around 80. I mean, he was 79 when he died. They're members of the Supreme Court. They either die in office or they resign. And so the next president could have to fill 3, maybe 4 spots. And so I think, this next election could be a huge election based on that, based on how progressive we as a country are getting. And you're going to start to get a lot of younger justices in there. I mean, Sonia Sotomayor was born, I think, in 1960. It might have been 1919. But either way, I mean, she's the youngest member of the Supreme Court, and she's very progressive. And I think you're going to start to see that you'll have some more progressive members of the Supreme Court get in there, whether they're Republican leaning or Democrat leaning, but you're going to get younger members that are going to change the face of that court. I can't even begin to reiterate how important I think this election cycle is, and the fact that Trump keeps winning scares the shit out of me. And the only thing that scares me equally as much is the fact that Hillary keeps. So, and when I say keeps winning, she's won twice out of 3 contests, and they've all been close though. So that's the one hope that we have. The Republicans can't seem to get out of their own way to stop Trump, and it scares the shit out of me. Anyway, to kind of break off back into our next segment here. Some friends of mine from when I was younger, and when I say friends, they were friends of my family. This woman is about 10 years older than me, moved to Maine. And where they built their house in Maine, there's really not a lot of opportunity for them to get electrical lines run to the site where they were building their house. It was going to.
Did they live in the commune?
No. They have property pretty far up in Maine, and
so it's not Wanderlust.
No. And so the issue that they were running into was that their budget for what they were doing was going to be huge if they tried to get the electric company to come out and put lines to the house. And so what they did was they looked at some alternative energy options, and what they came up with was that they wanted a wind turbine and solar panels. So their house is completely off the grid. They own their solar panels that charge a battery, and they own the wind turbine that also will power functions of their house. And they built their house back when it was really expensive to build houses, and so and it's still expensive to build houses, but they were in the housing boom, during the housing boom, and now that the housing values have dropped, they went to go get their house refinanced, and banks won't write them any refinancing. They won't do the underwriting process because they're afraid of what the resale value of the home actually is, because it doesn't have electricity coming from the grid. And so, banks are actually frowning upon this ability to get off of the grid and use renewable energy or sustainable energy or alternate energy sources. And it kind of got me started looking at what's out there currently for energy sources. So you've got companies, at least here in Massachusetts, like Solar City, Vivint, who put solar panels on your house. They subsidize the cost of your electricity. They set your panels to work at a certain percentage, and then they feed back to the grid, and they get money. They make money off of the energy that they sell back to National Grid, which is one of our electric companies, and Star. So as I started to look into what solar could do, I found out that Tesla has created a battery that is far superior to any other home energy battery on the market. You completely cut ties from the grid. You actually can remove the wires, the electrical coming into your house from the grid. And Tesla has found a way to optimize the solar panels that they put on your house to charge this battery. You would get a week's use out of the battery if there was zero charge to go back onto the battery for a house about the size of 6,000 square feet. So essentially, you pay Tesla. They come in, their engineers design based off of your sun hours an efficient battery, an efficient solar panel usage that it actually generates electricity more than what you use throughout the day, throughout a week, charges up the battery, and you're completely off the grid. And if the sun doesn't come out for a week, for whatever reason, you could live for an entire week without draining the battery in a 6,000 square foot house.
The sun doesn't come up for a week. What the hell are we?
No, but I'm just saying in general, the idea is that you don't have to add charge to the battery, and you'd still have power for your whole house for a week.
Does it have
longer.
like a bicycle in the basement that if the sun doesn't come up for a week, you can just like pedal away furiously?
Unfortunately, if the sun doesn't come up for a week and you've used all that energy, you're screwed. So sorry about that. But, it's something that I find really interesting. And, as we start to worry about what we're doing with fossil fuels and, the government is subsidizing alternative energy. And in the state of Massachusetts, they're actually subsidizing the cost of putting solar panels on your house and what. A lot of people are building houses that are purely electric. You don't have your hot water heater's electric, powered by solar. Your heating is all electric baseboard, powered by solar. Your air conditioning is again all electric. Central AC, what have you. And as we're starting to become more aware of fossil fuels, people aren't getting gas or oil as much because there's all these other options out there. And to me, something that I love the idea of Tesla coming in, putting solar panels on my house and getting away from my electric supplier because they suck. I mean, in the winter months, they crank the price of electricity. It's stupid. And I end up paying 3 or 4 times what I would pay in the summer months running my ACs all day, every day.
And there's not much competition out there for, companies to go with as well.
And some of the, go ahead.
But it's not them cranking on the price. The reason the cost goes up in for electricity in the winter, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it makes sense once you realize that most of the generation, especially in our region, which is New England,
is older.
It comes from natural gas. And when is natural gas being used the most? It's being used the most in the winter to businesses and homes, therefore driving the price of natural gas up and drives the cost of electricity
and there's also a bottleneck because the way that it's supplied to National Grid, it goes to them at a much slower rate than it does in the summer. And I understand this, but there are still companies out there like Shell Electric was offering like 10 cents per kilowatt hour for a 2-year contract.
Shell Electric actually is no longer.
When they existed, they were actually pieced off. I think Shell got rid of them and sold them to some other company that is now, I think it's Eversource or something. Mm-hmm. But regardless, I think the point is that there are other companies out there who are willing to lock you in at these prices and say, okay, well, you have a 2-year contract with us. Where National Grid, I don't have a contract with National Grid, but they screw you on prices. And some of the issues that I have with existing solar is like they'll come in and they'll say, hey, we're going to put solar panels on your house. You'll get about 10% of your energy from National Grid, and the rest of it comes from the solar panels. Everything that you don't use, we send back. They design, but they design the solar panels only to be so efficient. Well, if I'm letting you put solar panels on my roof for a 20-year contract, I don't want to pay National Grid anything to supply me with additional energy.
Absolutely.
You're putting solar panels to make money on my house. I would rather, pay for that, but the solar panels, the technology is still really expensive to get a battery.
It's becoming more affordable, Jordan, but yeah, you're still right. For the average, working class person, it's still quite a burden to pay for.
Jordan, do you know if the installations that you're speaking of, do you know if those have some sort of energy storage?
Most of them don't.
Like a battery, like
most
you're talking
of them
about
don't.
Tesla?
But you can get one. So, for instance, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law live down the street. They went and they got a battery backup, but the battery backup only lasts for them for like a day. So,
right. Well, it's meant to get you. I mean, so basically, the idea with solar would be that if you owned your own system, you would design it so that you would generate enough electricity during the day to sustain your usage during the day, and then also store enough energy in a battery so that you can use it all night without tapping into the grid. But a lot of these programs that are subsidizing the cost of electricity are just basically trying to generate it during the day and then just selling it back to the grid. I
completely understand. That's that's how they make the money, but that's why they make you sign a 20-year lease.
And then at the in the night when you're drawing off National Grid or whoever your electrical supplier is to power your lights and your heat and your air conditioning and your everything.
So I think a bigger issue and something that this family that I grew up with, this woman, she's trying to petition the government to actually get specific mortgages based on houses that are completely cut off from the grid and using renewable energy in programs to support refinancing, for houses that do the same thing, because it's so hard to get underwriters to approve, lower rates or refinance a house or supply a mortgage to a house that doesn't have some type of tied-in energy grid, because they don't feel like it's going to appeal to enough people. And so I just think it's a very interesting problem. And I didn't realize that it was a problem until just recently when I found out that they were having this issue at their house. And I started to look it up, and there's a lot of people who can't get out from under these huge interest rates when they built their houses, or they took out a mortgage for whatever reason, and they have these sustainable energy sources using wind or using solar. They're stuck with mortgage rates that are 3 or 4 points higher than what you can get right now. It's unreal.
That's not fair.
The other thing that might be, screwing them up a little bit too is that, the market, basically a bank is evaluating the market rate of a home if it were to sell so they could recoup their investment. And if their home, it sounds like they built it brand new during the housing bubble, is worth, a decent amount of money, or they put a decent amount of money into it and then it lost a lot of value, it might be, I'm sure that being off grid is contributing, but the market value has fallen. So maybe if it cost them, $300,000, $400,000 to build their house, maybe the house isn't worth that. Being in a remote location, probably doesn't help that as well, because there's not as much demand in the market in that area, most likely. And then I think probably the final nail in the coffin is you're not connected to the grid, which also, limits its marketability. But it's probably more of like a trifecta than just because they're off.
Well, they got 95% done with one underwriting process, and then when it came to the final steps, because they had no tie-in to the electric grid, that's what stopped the whole process. They were 95% complete with a loan, and the bank said, "Well, our concerns are with the marketability of your house and the resellability, and we unfortunately cannot finish writing this loan." To me, that sounds so backwards, because there is such a push right now to rid yourself of fossil fuels. And the government just came back from that, G20 summit or whatever it was, talking about global climate change and having to reduce our carbon footprint, because, our use of fossil fuels and fossil fuel emissions is contributing to the changing climate. And, the North Pole, was it the North or South Pole, just had their warmest January on record ever. They said that the floating ice, land masses in the ice, were actually melting. I think it's actually north, because it had to do with Iceland too, or Greenland. The winter in Greenland is actually the warmest on record for Greenland ever too. They broke records.
I do know, because obviously the South Pole, their winter was last summer because of the atmosphere thing. But I did read that it was a abnormally warm year.
Right, and obviously El Nino contributes to that, but they're saying that even if El Nino didn't exist this year, scientists have said that even if El Nino wasn't a factor, that the North Pole still would have had its warmest year on record in January.
Where do the polar bears live?
The Arctic. The Arctic circles the North Pole.
Yeah, they live on
the North Pole.
There's polar bears, I think there's polar bears in Alaska. I know there's polar bears in the Arctic.
In Norway, Russia.
Actually, you know what? In Norway, this is kind of an interesting little sidebar. In Norway, there's an entire township that even if you're a guest there, you actually have to, you leave your house with an assault rifle, because if you don't,
dangerous.
If you don't, polar bears will attack people if they're hungry enough, if they don't have enough food. So you actually
And they're so fast.
Yeah,
as
bears
well.
are extremely fast, and I mean, when they stand up, they can be upwards of 9 feet tall. And polar bears are big boys, and or gals, and so you actually have to walk around with a rifle if you go outside anywhere in this town during the winter. It's unreal to me. That is, I mean, it's a fascinating thing to think about. But I mean, in order to live in that town, you have to own a rifle. And if you stay there and you're just a tourist, they actually go through a rifle safety course, and you have to walk around with a rifle if you're going to go to anywhere in the town as a tourist.
I bet you like the rape in that place is like non-existent. Like rape and violent crime probably don't exist.
Well, that's the thing.
'Cause everybody's armed.
I would assume that probably the same thing, honestly. And you know what? In fact, why don't you guys talk? I'm gonna look it up.
Jordan's gonna fire up the old.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a
fire up the
Google.
old Google
Give
machine.
me a second.
Hey, while you're doing that, speaking of, did you hear about the 150,000 penguins that died wherever the penguins live?
South Pole.
Yeah, South Pole, Antarctica.
150,000, and what time frame?
150. I don't know, but some
Seems like quite a lot.
some iceberg or something
Iceberger?
was melting. Some iceberger blocked off their colony from the ocean. They couldn't get out, and they all just starved to death. 150,000 penguins.
So the town of the town in Norway called Svalbard. It's Svalbard. Shooting them in self-defense is allowed. Anyone venturing outside the settlement is required to carry a rifle in case of attack. So it's Svalbard, Norway, which is kind of like its own little island in not even close to the mainland of Norway. It's actually up in the Arctic. But people go there because you can see polar bears just lying around. Like people want to see, like the nature tourists go there and they see the polar bear. So now I want to find out what the crime rate is in Svalbard.
So these penguins have to walk 60 kilometers now to get to the ocean to fish. Like, why don't the penguins just move? You know what I mean? They're like living there. They got to walk 60 miles to basically work, and then 60 miles back. And I guess they're dropping dead all over the place. How come they just don't move? Why doesn't the colony just move close to the ocean?
Sure, there's been studies on that, and if they have the answer to it, I'm sure they would have disclosed it. But maybe there's no reason. Maybe
why don't you just go
really
ask
dumb.
the penguins?
That's a goddamn good idea.
Yeah, tell them to move out of Pittsburgh and move to some fucking Canadian country so we don't have to see them.
Pittsburgh Penguins.
But getting back to the whole alternative energy, I was reading an article in The Guardian, and I think it was about last month, and this caught me off track because I had no idea, but I guess for the last 5 years, they've been doing a national solar job census, and for the third year in a row, the solar industry, the hiring percentages went up 20%, and it now employs nearly in this country we have 209,000 people working in the solar sector, and that 77% more than the amount of people that work in the domestic coal mining industry, which is just, outrageous. Considering the fact that coal miners all the way up until the last decade, it was, if you go to Kentucky, you go to Philadelphia.
My daddy was a coal miner.
Pennsylvania, you go to Tennessee. All these states,
His
most of the
daddy was a
people,
coal
the
miner.
occupation
Was his daddy
coal
before
mining.
a coal miner
And
too?
His daddy before that was a coal miner.
And a year, we're now losing about 20,000 jobs a year in the coal mining
But my
industry.
son ain't gonna be a coal
I think
miner.
I got the black lung pop.
Even though it was believed that, alternative energy was more of a rich person's thing, it just goes to show you that not all rich people, it's becoming working class people, and people that are middle class are now purchasing this.
Well, I've been reading a couple of books that are really one is called Lights Out. And I think it's not by Dan Rather. I think it's
I just interject here for a minute.
Ted Koppel.
Like, I don't know why you guys are both so afraid that. You guys have both mentioned, like, hey, the sun's not going to come up. I'm afraid that I'm not going to get energy.
I say it as a joke.
It's been coming up for 4.5 billion years.
No,
So then it's due for a day off.
It's not going to come up for 5
It's due
days.
for a
Well,
day
I
off.
think
I think what Jordan's alluding is, okay, like from what I've heard of people that have the solar panels and run their whole home with solar, is that yes, on days if we've had about 3 or 4 days where it's just been snowing, or it's just been raining and it's been cloudy and foggy, yes, the power in their homes has went off. You know, they don't have as much energy. And
so anyway, the other part of that, I think, Tom, is I joke in all actuality, but this book, Lights Out, it's actually by Ted Koppel. I couldn't think of his name, and I knew
Walter Cronkite died like 6 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I know. I was obviously looking for somebody, couldn't find it.
He was killed by the government. He was going to reveal the moon landing was fake. But anyway, go ahead. I digress.
Now you're going to be killed. Now you're going to be killed by the government. Way to go. So Ted Koppel wrote this book, and it's actually really interesting. It talks about the vulnerabilities in the electrical grid in America. And
we've discussed this before because we were having a conversation about.
I don't think we discussed it on the podcast though.
No, I'm pretty sure we did because we talked about the attack on that substation that was out.
No, that was all behind the scenes conversation because we were all going to read the book and then talk about it. But
no, we did.
No, because I stopped reading it for a little bit, but I just picked it up again. Yeah, no, it's fine. There was the attack on the substation. And it proved how poor the grid actually is and how outdated our equipment for the electrical grid is, because the PG&E substation out in California that was attacked, it took them 27 days to get the parts to get it back working again. A big fear is that, especially with North Korea being as insane as they are, having the ability to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile and having the ability to launch a satellite into space that could carry an intercontinental ballistic missile leaves open for the ability to launch a nuclear warhead and detonate it over the eastern seaboard and knock out the entire eastern seaboard's electrical. And behind closed doors, this book talks about how they didn't want to put the money in the infrastructure to support it in case an EMP were to go off, or if they were a large enough nuclear blast above the eastern seaboard, it would actually fry all of our electronics.
No, my iPhone.
And so, oh
wait, I don't have an iPhone.
Obviously there's not a lot of safety, fail safes in the event that an EMP goes off. And it's a very real possibility considering that North Korea's had 5 nuclear tests supposedly successfully, all underground. By the way, the world scientists also seem to think that by testing these underground nuclear weapons, they're actually going to cause a local volcano there to erupt because of the pressure.
Massive amount of heat and energy.
Well, the pressure that's being caused in the earthquakes that are being caused by the underground missile testing. They actually are afraid that they're going to activate this volcano, and it would actually cause severe climate change throughout the world because of how large the volcano is. And it was a very interesting article that I read.
Big global cooling instead of global warming. Is that the answer?
We should start blasting.
Brains figured out?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, scientists are saying, hey, don't do this anymore. And clearly North Korea's like, I want to show you guys that yellow cake is not just for eating.
These scientists, man, they're just killing all the fun.
Yeah, no kidding.
They won't let us warm the planet. They won't let us cool the planet. Make up your goddamn minds.
So anyway, this book kind of goes into detail about.
Planet, we should just have every single person take an aerosol can and just spray it right outside.
And we'll call it Worldwide Aerosol Day.
You know what though? Neil deGrasse Tyson would slap you. He would find you and slap you.
He's probably looking for us right now.
I
sense stupid in the force.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's why I'm running my campaign on. We're going to have a whole day of aerosol, maybe a whole week of it. Maybe we'll eliminate winter for the East Coast.
It's funny to actually hear him, like Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about like the Republican candidates, like Ted Cruz. He hates Ted Cruz because he's like, what type of grown individual doesn't believe in climate change? What type of special do you have to be that you don't think that the world's weather is changing? And it's really funny to hear him talk about Ted Cruz.
Well, the crazy thing about it too, and I know we bring up Ted Cruz like every single week, and I think it is because he's just a repulsive, disgusting human being. But this guy is probably, out of all the candidates, we're talking intellectually, and I know we can laugh at that for a lot of his views, but like academically speaking, he's probably the smartest candidate. I mean, this is a guy who went to Princeton. I think he went to Harvard. His Harvard professor said that he was, although they were not in the same ideology as he was, but they said he was the most brilliant student, one of the most brilliant students they ever had. And you can tell that in the debates. And his whole thing, I think, Ted Cruz, is I don't even think he believes in a lot of what he says. I think he's just a power-hungry
you know what really scares me, by the way? And I need to admit
Joseph
this on
McCarthy.
air.
I mean, you saw those photos of Joseph McCarthy. I mean, he has the same body structure.
I need to admit this on the air. There was a couple of moments in the last Republican debate that I was watching before Carolina where Ted Cruz had said things, and I was like, "Oh my God, I understand what he's talking about," and it made sense. And I was like, I can't do this. I had to drink and I watched some CNN and I listened to NPR and was like, all right, I feel a little bit better. But he said something and I forget what it was now. I forget what he was talking about. But even my brother had texted me and he goes, "Did Ted Cruz just make sense?" And I was like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. You know, I think, you know, part of me wants to say that he doesn't believe half the shit that he says, and part of me wants to say the same about Donald Trump, but I don't want to take that chance, and I don't think any of you do.
No. I think, you know, the whole thing about, you know, the science denying and whatever, but I mean, I do think that he does have an evil.
I know. Okay, so we've talked a lot about his looks.
Plan for how he's going to run the country.
We've talked a lot about Ted Cruz's looks. You know, that he looks like Slimer before he died, and you know, he looks like he wears women's underwear, and he just have that smile about him. That when he gets that certain smile, I feel like that's a smile a serial killer would have. That's still on the loose.
He's the kind of guy that stares in the mirror every morning and just spits at it. That little bit of blood in the fluid. And he's just, as I said, and you should never judge a person also by their family as well. But have you actually heard Ted Cruz's father?
Is he a coal miner? Why does he get blood in his lungs?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think maybe Matt thinks he's Dracula. But
well, he does look like Grandpa Munster as well.
I think we need to wrap this up because we've stopped talking about what we were discussing.
Yeah, what were we talking about? I don't even remember.
We were talking about renewable energy, and I was looking up statistics about Svalbard, but I can't find them, so I'm going to go ahead and say there's no crime.
There's probably
there's a disclaimer. I'm going to give you a disclaimer.
If you can't find data, there's no crime.
Yeah, right. I'm going to give you a disclaimer that says take that at your own risk, in that Misguided Musings is not at fault if you go to Svalbard, Norway, and are injured in any type of domestic violence or crime.
Unless you're a woman listening to this podcast living there, then you're fucked.
I thought it was safe.
Yeah. Misguided Musings said it was safe. You guys are liars. Great big phonies.
But I think it was a good subject for us to bring up about, you know, alternative energy and how it's changing our economy. But I think it'll be very important in the next 5 years because with the way gas prices and oil prices are, you know, are we going to see a decline in it because oil's so cheap and it's a lot more competitive? Or
you know, and this brings up a whole other
alternative energy like solar panel installations, is it going to make them bring their costs down? And I think,
well, here's the thing, Matt, you're bringing up a subject because I think that we're starting to see the end of OPEC right now. In fact, Russia is actually controlling OPEC. As we speak, they've gotten OPEC to agree to start, or the nations that form up OPEC, mainly Iran and Syria, or Saudi Arabia, Iran and Saudi Arabia, to kind of stop fighting. And they've actually all the major countries, oil-producing countries, have slowed production to kind of drive up demand again in the market and cause the cost of oil to go up because of how bad it is. And I think OPEC allowing Russia to step in like that is a sign that OPEC is probably not going to be around much longer. And I think you're going to start to see countries not follow that rule, and it's really going to get bad. And I also just listened to, oddly enough, I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about Venezuela was providing free fuel basically to its people,
I read about that too.
and they gave them a 9,000% increase in price of fuel at the pumps. And so essentially, to fill your car now costs about 10 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And the people of Venezuela are actually saying that they want to increase the price to fill your car to about a quarter because their GDP has been hurt so much by the cost of oil falling that they actually are going to be looking at huge deficits if things don't change. And I think you're absolutely right that this is going to have a bigger effect on the economy than we think it will. And I think, we're probably looking at the end of OPEC as a oil producing
cartel.
Yeah, right. And
cartel, a good word for it.
It's very interesting because you look at countries like Norway. How is Norway going to be affected by this? They're one of the largest oil producers ever.
I know they fund it they have enough oil for the next 100 years to basically fund their government.
Well, and they've got a huge sovereign fund. They've built a huge sovereign fund, learning from the past that none of the other oil producing nations have right now. And, like in Saudi Arabia, the same NPR, story was talking about the stark contrast between Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, they're starting to tax all of everything. Because in Saudi Arabia, you didn't have to pay tax on anything. Everybody has a government job. And now, because of how bad the economy has started to look with the price of oil, they're starting to tax literally everything in Saudi Arabia: products, income, houses. The first time they've ever had to pay a sales tax, and people don't know what they're going to do because it's driving the price of products up in the country, and they're all used to this certain lifestyle. And do they want to change this lifestyle? Do they how is this going to affect the global economy? And I just think it's a very interesting topic, and maybe something that we can explore in the next few episodes. But we're getting too long into it now, and I'm sure nobody wants to listen to us talk anymore, just the three of us. So,
and by the time the show is ending, Jesse has already had 9 birthday shots and 2 regular drinks.
Yeah, so Jesse never really got his penis caught in a window. He's out celebrating his birthday.
He'll probably get his penis caught in the window.
He might have his penis caught somewhere, but I don't think it'll be a window.
When he realizes he forgot his keys and can't get back into his house,
he's going to try and use his penis to open. I don't.
I don't want to see that.
I think we should probably stop talking about each other's penises. Honestly, this is 2 episodes in a row that we've started rumors about peni.
Maybe we should change the name of the show. Dick Envy.
Penile.
Yeah, let's just
penile musings.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening
from the prison.
Again, you can follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/misguided musings. You can follow us at Musing Podcast. I am at J_K_Oster. Matt is at An Eclectic Taste, and Jesse is at Hafrican J. That's H African J. This has been a Gear Network production. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, and iHeartRadio, either by searching for Gear Network or Misguided Music. Thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Bye.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network. Hey, Dawn, how's it going?
Living the dream. I'm actually just getting ready to do this commercial.
Oh, you mean the commercial where I tell our listeners to tune into Gear Network every week to listen to our show, Get Ready America? That one?
Yeah, John, that's the one.
They can also listen to us talk about news, sports, whatever's on our minds, that...
And a little what's on our listeners' minds, but they're just too nice to say it.
Well, that, Dawn, is a real humdinger.
Humdinger.
Come join us this and every week for Get Ready America, exclusively on the Gear Radio Network.
And the Gear Network app.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I am Ryan Wolf.
It's Mr. Perez.
And I have a question for you, Perez.
What's your question?
Do you like to listen to people talk about sports?
No. Of course I like sports and listening to people talk about sports.
Well, guess what? I have the perfect solution for you.
Solution for me?
There's a podcast on this very network.
This network?
Every single week you can hear it.
Really?
New content, latest and breaking news. We talk about baseball, football, hockey, basketball, soccer, UFC, whatever you want to talk about.
So sports in general.
They talk about sports in general. You got it.
I like
you
it.
know the dictionary.
I like it.
Very proud of you.
Thank you.
I must say, tune in. We are Better Live Than Dead.
You're not.
Every single week. You're not going to want to miss it. Exclusively here on the Gear Radio Network.